Kyle Bennett and his wife Hannah and their 4 children here with us. And just wanted to let everybody else know, since we have so many in the back, Brother Bennett here is preaching and teaching the gospel in Boston. He is working with the Christians in Boston, and we certainly appreciate what him and his family are doing there. He is one of the men that we support, and he's here to give us a brief report on how the work is going. And so we'll hand it over to Brother Bennett.
To begin, I'd like to read from Philippians chapter 1, and I think I've got, there we go, thank you. Philippians chapter 1, just verses 3 and 4. I'd like to read that for you this evening. I thank my God in all my remembrance of you, always in every prayer of mine for you all, making my prayer with joy, because of your partnership in the gospel from the first day until now. I want to begin by saying thank you. This church here at West Main, that you have helped support us and be a partner with us from the first day, which was back in April. It was when we began the work in Boston. And so I'm here to start by saying thank you. Thank you so much for your partnership. I am humbled by the people who give money, those of you here who give your money to help support those men, I know of this congregation, that they support, and it's humbling to know that you do that. So thank you from the bottom of my heart, from my family's heart. We really appreciate the church here. My family's here in Dallas for a week visiting our families. We're originally kind of from this Dallas area, so the elders asked me to come by and give a little report, and I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you this evening. So I'll try and keep it a little bit brief. I could probably talk for a while, but I'll try and keep it brief. To talk just a little bit about Boston. Boston is obviously a large city. It's up in the northeastern part of the United States. It's actually really far northeast United States. We didn't realize how far it was until we decided to move there. But and one thing that's interesting about really just that part of the country is the church is very limited up there. Religion in general is actually very limited up in the Northeast. You'll one unfortunately really common sight, you see the picture on the far upper right. Most church buildings around Boston will fly the rainbow flags, and it's because they are accepting of everybody and everything, and that's who they're trying to go. And so that's one type of thing that we're up against. There's another part of kind of the religious groups who actually are more cult-like with some of their practices, and so that makes spreading and teaching the gospel tough. That's what a lot of people know when they hear about the Bible or about churches, is some of these cult-like things, or even some of this, well, everybody's acceptable. And so that makes it difficult, but it also makes it very obvious that they need to hear it, that they need to hear about God and about Jesus, and that's why we are there. I mentioned that there's very few churches up there. The closest one, we are in downtown Boston. Closest one's about an hour, maybe a little over an hour to the north, or an hour to the south. And that's fairly typical in the northeast part of the country, where there's a really great distance among us. And so we have to work together because there's really not anywhere else that we can go. But I will say, it causes us and really forces us to be close-knit. And so that's actually been a really beautiful thing that we have seen and felt up there. I'll tell you a little bit about our group. We're a small group, Christians in Boston. We're about 35 to 40 people that are there. It's a very racially and internationally diverse group, which is a huge blessing, and that's something that we have loved, being a part of that group there. Another thing is, it's a very young group. You could probably notice in the pictures, there's not many older people a part of our church. I'm actually the oldest male in our congregation at the ancient age of 39, so tells you a little bit about the age of our congregation. Another aspect of the congregation is it's very young in the faith. About half of our members are new Christians of 4 years or less. A lot of them having been baptized and found the gospel in the city of Boston. So that's a big part of my work. Big part of my work is helping to teach and grow so that we all are growing in the unity of our faith and the knowledge of the Son of God, that we can all reach to mature manhood. So that ends up being a big part of of my work there. One example is there's a young man who he was a Christian for a while, but really was kind of shallow in his faith with that, and unfortunately, really just made some extremely poor decisions in things he's done. And so when we got there, we decided he and I would study together. We meet weekly to kind of go through that. And he had come to me and was like, "Hey, Kyle, I don't know how to study the Bible." It's like, well, let's start there. So we've been kind of going through that together, and it's really been neat seeing him blossom a little bit as we've kind of been working together. We actually had a meeting the other day of the men of our group to spread out the Bible classes for this next year, and he signed up to do 3 of the lessons, which was really cool. So he's actually going to lead 3 of our lessons in this summer, and so he and I are going to be working together on that. He's going to be doing Colossians, and so that's one little aspect of that kind of personal work, I guess, of the congregation. Another really large aspect of our work there is evangelism. Spreading the gospel to the community around. They need to hear it. One tool that we use, and I know that there are some around here. I think I've heard Ben even try it a little bit, or is going to. But the meetup studies, we use it's an app or a website, but it's a meetup, and it's basically a way to reach out to the community to say, hey, we have a meeting, and it's typically at coffee shops, Panera Bread, things like that, and we're doing a Bible study. And so people can come to that and study the Bible. And what's really cool about kind of those meetups is actually several of our young Christians, that's actually how they heard about it. That's how they heard about the gospel. They were searching. They knew they needed something. They had this meetup that said Bible study, and they said, well, I live near Panera. I'm going to go. And then they hear the Bible, and they say, wow, that's what I need. And then studies have been able to grow from that. And so we've had a number of people baptized through just hearing the gospel from these meetup studies. So that's a huge blessing. It's also really amazing thing that I love about it is we just have really steep studies in these meetup studies, and so even our members who show up, it's amazing. We're going through Revelation right now, and so I'm going to give Ben all my notes. I don't have any notes actually. I just run the study, but it's one of those that it's really cool to see us spending a Thursday evening together, a Monday evening together, to sit there and just study the Bible together, even as members. But then it also becomes a time where a member runs into somebody at the coffee shop because they're reading their Bible, and they say, well, hey, we've got a meetup study tonight. Would you like to come? And they do. And that's just been really cool, a really cool aspect of kind of the meetup studies and what we do. I'll give one example of a guy that came to our meetup, and because you do end up meeting all sorts of people. We had one man who came in. We were studying 1 Peter. It was on our little page that we had, and he walks in. He says, "Hey, I hear you're studying 1 Peter. I was watching House MD on television, and one of the characters quoted from 1 Peter, and then I saw you're studying 1 Peter, and I had to come." And I was like, "I don't know what you're talking about, but okay, have a seat. Let's study just 1 Peter instead. I don't know anything about House." But and so he comes in. I'll tell you a little bit about him. Richard, he is really intellectual guy. He's an older gentleman, and he came in, and he and I kind of connected a little bit. And so we've gotten to eat a number of times together, and he even started to study a little bit. He did not believe in Jesus for a long time, most of his life. And he, one day, in fact, one thing he would do, he would actually argue with everybody, saying, oh, look, Jesus, that he's not real, there's nothing to this. And he would argue with other Christians that he had been around, that he would teach classes, and some of the students he would argue with. And one day he's like, you know what, I'm going to prove this. I'm going to prove Jesus isn't real. And he proved himself wrong. And that was amazing to hear this guy say that. He's like, I proved myself wrong. And I proved that Jesus was real. And then he said, so I'm a believer. Now, one thing with Richard, he doesn't know what that means. He doesn't know what it means to be a believer. And so that's my prayer, that's my hope with my studies with him, is to show him what it does mean to be a believer and to sacrifice our own lives in being a believer with Jesus. And so I'm prayerful for that. I'm hopeful for that. I would ask that you pray for Richard as well in that. I'll kind of cut it off. Like I said, I've got just a number of kind of pictures up here of our group. I'll just talk through it for real quick. So the top picture is where we meet. That's our the place where we meet on Sundays and Wednesdays. And then there's just kind of a number of pictures. The one on the left, that's a baptism that we had a few months ago, which was, by the way, our baptistry is Boston Harbor. I don't know if it compares, but it's really cold right now. It was even really cold then. So, but that's really cool. That middle picture is actually one of our meetups that we have, and it's just really neat to kind of be out in public studying the Bible, and you get kind of some weird looks every once in a while, but it's really a beautiful thing, and we really feel blessed there. I want to end by just saying thank you again. Thank you so much to this group. Really appreciate your partnership with us, your support. Feel free. Our family is here. We're Hannah and the girls are next to Nikki over there. So feel free to come up to us. We'd love to talk about it. If you want to stay for the next hour or so, we can tell you a little bit more about our work there in Boston. But please also keep us in your prayers. Keep me, Hannah, and our work there, but keep the church there in your prayers. It's a young group. It's a wonderful group, and we love them. We've grown to love them so much just in these 9 months, and we greatly appreciate it that we can spread the kingdom there in a place that's dark. So that's one thing I do want to leave you with tonight, which is an encouragement to you. Keep shining your light. Keep shining your light to the world around you, because it's dark. Be open about your faith of God and of Jesus, because we all have, you don't have to move to Boston to spread the gospel. We all have neighbors, coworkers, classmates who need to hear about God, who need to hear about Jesus, and it doesn't have to be hard. It can literally be you sitting in a break room, opening your Bible, and they say, what is that? That's interesting. You say, let's read it together. That's really all it has to be. So please, let's just keep shining our light to those around us, because they need it. And I'd like to this time offer an invitation. If there is anyone here who has a need, now is the time that you can do that. If you need prayers, I'm sure, come forward and for that, or if there's anything else. Now would be the time to come forward as together we stand and sing.